Hey everyone, welcome back to Right Media Group Chronicles. Today, my guest is Justin Dauer, founder of Anomaly by Design. He's a 3 times author and the guy behind some iconic product launches. He walked away from a VP role at a Fortune 5 company to bet on himself. And he's been all over dozens of podcasts talking about design, storytelling, and how to not screw up your products with AI. Justin, welcome to the show.
Hey, Yolanta, great to be here.
To start off with your story, you had a VP offer on the table at your previous role, another team to build, another big title. What made you say no to that and start Anomaly instead?
It was a non-trivial decision for sure. So I would have been working with a fellow who was my boss, a CTO, in a previous position, and he was moving on into a different role, and he more or less reached out and said, let's do it again. There's
Mm.
a VP of design position, a chance to build a team, a chance to create and collaborate together. It almost feels anti-ethical to everything going against the grain of where you think you should be going, about putting food on the table, about the lovely title, all those things that are very attractive and vital necessities, if you will. But my head was already in the space of betting on myself, if you will, as you said in your intro. And I'm a big proponent of putting my money where my mouth is in terms of working in a values aligned capacity, in terms of creating an environment in which I can do my best work and do my best alignment to clients and my values. And the way to do that to me at the time, and thankfully still almost 4 years later, was to starting my own thing and working with people I want to work with and working with clients I want to work with. So it's a very niche positioning, if you will. I think it limits me in many capacities in terms of not working with any client that's going to bring in money, but working with folks that I really maybe charged or energized by, or folks that, like I said, I know I'm going to be able to create my best work with. But boy, almost 4 years later, I can say I'm really glad I took that leap.
So I'm wondering because there's a lot of people there's sort of that tipping point for them, and I have to say it's not usually where they get offered a promotion. So it's a very unique position to be in. So I'm wondering if there was a moment or a conversation you had that you realize I have to do this now or I never will.
I'd say that's a fair assessment. I've talked to some colleagues along the way, and there's a broad sense that you're either starting something at the beginning of your career or you're starting something in the twilight of your career. And I thought, I'm like, okay, does that mean I'm getting old? Because I'm going to start something. I'm starting something now, but I have notches on my belt from experience. I've been in the industry over 25 years. I think I have a pretty good sense of design as it relates to business and business outcomes and healthy, creative, and human-centric or all living things-centric outcomes in tandem. And my network is quite vast at this point. I wasn't going into it blindly and just saying, I'm going to do this and having nothing lined up. I had already kind of had the wheels turning about folks I want to work with or put some feelers out there. So it wasn't a completely blind leap. I don't want to make it sound too fanciful, but it just felt like the right time. It felt like everything that was true to me. And like I said, I'm a big money where my mouth is person in terms of values alignment and being true to myself. It really felt like that was the time to bet on myself.
Is it that intuition that you have to trust as well, and that runaway that you have with clients sort of lined up to get you going?
Yeah. Yeah, there's a high degree of trusting your gut ism at that point for sure. But I think you have to take trusting your gut aligned with not taking a free fall into the abyss. That's why I said I had some client discussions lined up and things like that. And even those clients that were lined up, you have to prepare for unpredictability. Some have come and gone. Some contractors have been cut short. Some have bet fully on AI and pulled their business. So it's incredibly rewarding to lead a consultancy and have the buck stop with you. At the same time, the buck stops with you completely. So, sales, new biz, forecasting, client relations, output, outcomes, there's still a healthy mix that you have to be involved in. So it's absolutely trade-offs, and I've learned quite a bit in a short amount of time.
I'm really trying to speak to the people and learn from your journey because there's a lot of entrepreneurs that have a job and that safety net. Do you personally ever miss the structure, the guaranteed paycheck?
100%.
Mhm.
100%. I'm not going to be false about in any capacity. There is absolutely a comfort in the steadiness of contributing to your 401k and making a consistent amount of money and knowing you're going to get a review that covers cost of living. There's peace in that for sure. Whether you're an IC or you are just a single consultant or you work in a smaller agency/consultancy that I do, there's much more feast or famine-ness, and that's with as much forecasting and predictability as you try to make revenue, and of course, it's all about ideally having predictable revenue with longer term engagements. There's much more volatility in that capacity. When you also have to be responsible for sales, as I just said, and things like you have to wear multiple hats for sure. So yeah, the predictable nature, there's a high degree of comfort from that. But at the same time, everything else I've just articulated about being able to truly create and work I want to work with, that balances that sting out a bit, I suppose.
Yeah, I think there's a saying somewhere. It's sort of high risk but high reward that comes with it, the whole role
Precisely.
of starting your own business. Tell me a little bit more about your agency. Who is it that you work with today?
Yeah, thankfully, I can give you a very true answer here. And we are working with clients that we are energized and charged by, and folks we know we're going to be able to do our best work with. We've worked in gaming. I am a huge collector. This is going to make me sound super nerdy. I'm a huge collector of Japanese selvage denim and heritage menswear. And we worked with a denim client. We are currently working with a high-end craft furniture client that we're going to be launching their new digital presence soon. And it's really fun and interesting work. There's been, rebranding, there's been replatforming, there's been mindful integration of AI, and the high-end furniture client was more or less saying, like, I hear a lot about AI, like, do I need to do something with this? Like, what do I do? And more or less saying, like, yes, you have to use AI. It's like, let's talk about the outcomes you're trying to achieve. What are we trying to get to? Would it actually be helpful? I'm going to hate myself for saying this. Is the juice worth the squeeze on expense? All these kind of things that you can kind of like slow somebody down, talk them through something rationally when they kind of come in a manic state about, potentially catching up with competitors. That's really the work I value immensely, really connecting with people. Anomaly's mantra is design is connection made manifest. And being able to genuinely do that, slow people down, connect with them as human beings, connect with them compassionately, and understand they have payroll to meet, but there's also expense over here. And how can we manage the two things? A lot of systems thinking is involved in that. And that's work that I find immensely rewarding, and I'm charged by it. So we're thankfully able to work in those sectors quite often.
Are you taking care of the A to Z approach of a product launch and a rebrand as well? I'm sort of wondering what does that entail in your services exactly? What does a product launch entail?
It certainly could. I would be lying if I said every engagement is the full breadth of our services. It just has not worked out that way, and I suspect will not. So some have evolved in that. We've had clients. The gaming client started out as a strictly like digital marketing endeavor, and then it evolved into launching a loyalty program, which was doing user research and understanding the product market fit, doing a brand exercise and coming out with all the different artifacts from that, the brand and visual and content language, digital presence for that, the app, understanding customer behaviors as they're interacting with the loyalty program and environment. That company was ultimately bought. So then we did the rebrand of the merger of those two companies. So sometimes it does organically evolve, and you're like, oh, this is cool, or this is cool, or this is cool. And sometimes you just dip your toe in here, and it's like updating a website, and then you dip your toe back out and you do some good work with them, and then the phone rings again. So yeah, it evolves into the full breadth of services. A product launch, I guess, would it encompass everything from the full breadth of human connection-based services, which is discovery, persona generation, like I said, product market fit. We are a full service agency, as small as we are, so we do design and marketing services as well. And in fact, it's been really interesting for me since starting this agency. A lot of our ins with businesses has been through the lens of marketing. Like their spend has been allocated to marketing services. That has opened the door for us to come in and then talk about digital products as well. So I don't know if that's a long-standing trend or if other folks have seen that as well, but a lot of our foot in the door ism has come through talking about marketing first.
That's interesting. Interesting perspective there. You mentioned something about juice being worth the squeeze.
Ah, yeah, I
I
did.
want you to explain that a little bit more. And then you said you like to work with clients that energize you. What do you mean by energize you? Do you mean like products that interest you?
Yeah, so starting with the juice is worth the squeeze, that's a classic old school like marketingism to say, is it worth the effort at the end of the day? And when I used it in the capacity that I did previously, like the client I was referring to previously, the craft furniture client, was saying, do I need to use AI to catch up with or leapfrog my competitors? And kind of slowing down and taking a look at, the investment in AI that we ultimately went with is in the product configuration capacity. We did a custom product configurator for them, which is going to be really cool. That is AI powered. And that to me was a great fit because it wasn't AI for AI's sake. It is a differentiator. It is not a plus one feature. The outcomes are very clear and focused in terms of lead gen and the way it's going to generate specs right to the crafting room floor. That's what I'm more or less talking about in terms of slowing clients down, understanding is X worth the effort of Y in terms of an outcome, and not just doing it for the sake of doing it. If a client comes in and says, I need an app, of course, it's incumbent upon us to say, what are you trying to get to? Like, what are the outcomes of the app? Do you actually need an app? Is there a different outcome for her?
Or you just
So
want to
that
have it for the sake of it, right?
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And in terms of being energized by that, I suppose I mean fulfilled. That's a much more distinct way of articulating it. And my latest book is called In Fulfillment: The Designer's Journey, as it aligns to genuinely making your best work culturally and in terms of output and outcomes. And I had a point in my career, I was a director of design for a Swedish design agency. And we were working with really cool clients like, athletic shoes and pet food makers, manufacturers. And I got to the point where I felt like, and this is going to sound terrible, this work, like it's good work, but I'm just not invested in the work. And when I was in a position of leadership, leading a team of designers, that's unacceptable. That's completely unacceptable. If I am feeling disconnected from what I'm doing, it's not just about me. It's about those who are on my team or those whose evolution I'm responsible for. So I more or less cut myself out of the picture. And I said, I'm not doing my best work here. I'm not connected with what I'm doing. And I quit and moved on to something else. So that's what I mean by energize. Am I genuinely connected to what I'm doing? Am I not being performative in my actions? Am I doing right by not just the client, but those who are going to be engaging with what the client is putting out there at the end of the day?
That's a very interesting thought. You sort of didn't have the passion or the drive behind you. And I think I know what you mean because it reflects in your work as well in how you communicate with your team. It's better for me to leave this because I'm not doing my best work.
And my best work at that point, of course, is in that role, I wasn't super hands-on. I was responsible for my team's evolution and their output and outcomes. But me not doing my best work is me not being able to best help my team evolve and do their best work. Again, is unacceptable in a leadership position. There's a lot of come to Jesus caliber moments of eureka-ism. Like I'm not doing my best work. I need to step away. And I think it's just a constant philosophy of being true to yourself that kind of manifests in the actions that I took.
Is it also sort of that impact the brand's having as well? Sort of like non-profits, or even if it's non-profits, it's just the impact the brand has. Is it a positive impact or a negative impact?
That's super fair. That's super fair. And I could honestly say I question every time I have to use like a ChatGPT caliber tool because you have to be mindful of the ethics of the folks who are putting the tools out there and the environmental
Right.
impact on what the tool does every time I type something into a text query. Like, what is it doing to the environment? So I think just going all in on a tool for tool's sake or speed for speed's sake, without being mindful of the ethical implications of what we're contributing to by using these tools, I think is just existing in a land of bliss that is not attached to reality.
Yeah. I mean, do you have any more for us to bite onto? You say the ethical implications behind using this tool. Is there anything out there that you can let me know or the audience know that hold you off on further using a tool or just being more mindful?
The lens I will give to that response to give it a bit more focus is speed for speed's sake and people completely attributing their identity to a tool. And AI is a tool. And I'll use LinkedIn as an example. And some people skin my crawl just at that segue. A lot of the posts, many of the posts I see on LinkedIn are so obviously written by AI. And then the responses to the posts are AI. And the responses to the responses are AI. I think humans, in many ways, have completely become AI thought leaders in terms of just dumping 14 paragraphs out there of the same kind of stuff, the same kind of rhythms of how AI writes. And humans have kind of stagnated in our evolution because we're deferring to a tool to like crank out all this performative content to get social interaction, to get likes. A lot of folks are poo pooing like very human focused aspects of the design process to say, like we are able to forego research because we can have, AI generated personas now. And to me, that just is like a spear in the heart to say you're foregoing human connection at the most nascent phases of a project. So I think many folks are foregoing their identity or deferring or ceding their identity or their persona to a tool right now. Again, which is massively ethically fraught in terms of some of the founders of these tools, their political donations or affiliations, or what these tools that are, the processor intensity and what's that doing to the environment with these massive uses of these AI tools. It's existing in a pseudo reality because you are not being super mindful of the ethical and values based implications of what is behind these tools. So, and I hear, it's maybe 20 times faster. It's made our design team, what it used to take 3 weeks now takes 1 day. I'm thinking, like, what is the damn rush? Like, what are we were already under massive business constraints to crank things out, iterate product. Market speed or speed to market is obviously a consideration on the business front we have to be mindful of. But I don't think it should come at the expense of all the other things I just cited, all the ethical
Mhm.
implications of the tools that we're using, speed for speed's sake, foregoing the imperative of connection and understanding what we're speeding toward in the first place, just for the sake of cranking something out and understanding how cool this Claude to whatever tool thing can do. Is it valuable? Yes. Is it going away? No. So of course, there's stuff we should understand there and iterate on and figure out. But I don't think we should just completely blindly put our foot on the accelerator when there's all these other things we should be mindful of.
Yeah. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I'm sort of falling culprit to the whole AI myself. I've had 60 conversations with agency owners now, and we have fed that knowledge into like an AI model, and we actually create LinkedIn posts from it. And I have to say, the posts are really valuable. So, in a way, I'm sort of one of the people you just talked about. But for me to retain that from 60 conversations I've had is nearly impossible. I've found it valuable on that regard. Now, my follow up question to you, Justin, is how can you use AI ethically? Because, like you said, it's not going away, but how can you use it mindfully?
So this is the follow up, and I'm really glad you organically led me into this. I will say, as I have to do a lot of admin based work, or if I need to really understand a complex RFP that has a lot of technical components before I can bring my technical advisors in, I will use AI to help me break things down. So for very specific uses, for business admin based things I have to do where my brain will kind of disconnect as a creative person, it's very helpful in that capacity. But I'm not like, I don't have like the model where, and again, there's nothing wrong with this for folks who need it. This is my 2 cents specifically. I'm not just talking to AI constantly all day or just like constantly cranking things out. I use it for very niche specific purposes to help me go through business admin things that I would kind of disconnect on or not do the best work for. So does it have its uses? Again? Absolutely. Do I use it for everything in my daily life? I do not. And when I do use it, again, I'll even say I'm kind of like how many fish did I just kill from using ChatGPT? So I'm a bit hypocritical in that sense. I do use it as it relates to business admin things, but I have not completely ceded my identity as Captain AI either.
Yeah, I've seen a couple of funny videos where, for example, you're going there to speak to your manager. You use ChatGPT. Your manager used ChatGPT to come back to you, and it's just leading nowhere.
Right.
It sort of becomes very generic in what you're seeing being published out there on content on LinkedIn or Facebook, anywhere. And even if you use it for your business, that could be a really big killer because you just look like everyone else.
Yeah, I was just and then like I mean that's a great point because if I think like an RFP response capacity, say like everyone is throwing the PDF into their ChatGPT and saying break it down, there's probably going to be 75% of responses that are using the same kind of, we can think of like the ChatGPT caliber output rhythms. Like it's not this, it's that. It's not about X, it's about Y. Like we know how like AI driven content works. And you're probably going to get like, 75% of the responses that are kind of written with that same AI generated rhythm. And I don't know how off-putting that might be to those who are soliciting RFP responses to begin with. Maybe they don't care. Maybe I'm completely off base there. But I'm just saying broadly, there is a seeding of identity and human touch and leveraging our experiences, you, me, anyone else listening to this or have been on your show, of X amount of years that we've understood and had trials and tribulations on, and I hope that that knowledge is still brought to the table and it's not completely lost in AI generated output.
It's interesting. I've spoken to a few people that are setting up their podcast or they've had theirs for years, and their prediction is in the next sort of 3, 5 years, the one way to connect with people for businesses will be podcasting.
Mm,
Because everything else is just inauthentic, is sort of generic, is that AI being out there and this being sort of the only real thing going on.
right, right. I can see that. I mean, this is human connection. I mean, we're just having a conversation, over computer, but it could just be like we're having a conversation in a cafe.
Yeah, yeah,
And a lot of the podcasts I feel most connected to or rewarded by are the ones where it's just two folks chatting, just like this.
yeah,
Less
exactly.
polished. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, of course, getting to know each other, getting to know your opinions. Why have you come to that conclusion? What led you to that decision, pretty much? And I love a good discussion, especially if we disagree on a matter. Tell me why. I'd love to know
Right,
your opinion.
right. Yeah, I appreciate that.
But Justin, talking about authentic storytelling, because that's one subject being very passionate for you. Can you give me a real example where storytelling completely changed the outcome of a launch or a rebrand?
So I will come back to the craft furniture client that I mentioned, and we're going to be relaunching their digital presence, I would guess within the next month. And I've cited them a few times already with the AI project, but it's been a really rewarding project in terms of replatforming, like I said, ethical and mindful use of AI. And in terms of storytelling, which is I'm really appreciate you mentioning that. So we had to combine both honest, creative, connection-based storytelling in tandem with SEO, SEM, and repositioning. So their previous agency did some work for them that really made them take a hit in their search engine results. I'm talking plummet in terms of massive ding to sales, massive ding to rankings. And there was a lot of work to be done there in terms of communicating their value as a high end manufacturer that a lot of people just didn't know about. So I'm in Chicago proper. These folks are a little bit south. They're in Chicagoland. They're a little further south of Chicago. But their output and what they craft and create. And I am a huge proponent of craft as it relates to design process. It relates to, like I mentioned, the Japanese denim I love to talk about and collect because there's a story behind it. People buy and collect things because they like to tell the story behind it, which I certainly flap my gums a lot about. And there was like a lot of great work to be done there in terms of like articulating the value of what these folks create and getting brand awareness out there. So really talking about as someone comes into the showroom, how they are approaching them and guiding them into the store, understanding the needs, walking them through the process. The tool that we ultimately are creating with AI is intended to serve as a product-based a tangible representation of that, kind, compassionate hand on your shoulder. Like if you are virtually coming into the store, understanding your needs, knowing you kind of might have a sense of what you want, but it's an expensive purchase at the end of the day, and really getting to how does this fit into your life? How does this obviously be something you want to have a conversation about? But also, if you're having dinner at the table and your kid spills juice, does it stand up to the test of time? Does it stand up to everyday use? If you're dropping a plate, if you're putting something down hot on the table, is it going to leave that mark on the wood? It doesn't. Is it made ethically in terms of sustainability for the environment? It is. They had all these wonderful things that are fantastic for SEO, that are fantastic for storytelling, and are genuinely good in ethical capacity to talk about. It's good for the environment. It stands the test of time. It's like a legacy purchase that you would pass down to, in your family for generations. And there was just all this wonderful, authentic storytelling to be told that was not being told. And I think the value there, again, was great to talk about how it fits in your everyday life, how it's ethically made in terms of the environment, how their output is just fantastic in terms of like, there's restoration hardware out there or things like that, and big box retail outlets that people go to and drop a ton of money on. This client that I have, it makes furniture that is just as good, if not better, but they just don't have the brand recognition. So that is we're really talking about how things connect to your life, how it fits into the day to day. It's beautiful, it's functional, it's usable, but it stands the test of time. There was just so much rich, authentic storytelling to be had there that wasn't being told. Point of value one, And two, being infused with keywords, understanding what we can target in a very cost-effective capacity to realign their search engine rankings and bring back in some more sales virtually or people walking into brick and mortar. Just through through that lens of authentic storytelling, there was so much meat on the bone to drive outcomes, and it was really a fascinating process.
Yeah, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but from what I gather, when you're sort of trying to market a product, it's not selling the product, it's selling the emotion that the product gives the user. And storytelling is the vehicle how you communicate that.
That's exactly it. And it would have been a huge point of opportunity to miss if we just did a replatform from, I don't know, WordPress over to Shopify or Squarespace. Like, okay, we're focusing on ecom now. We're going to build out the product catalog. We're going to launch it with an AI thing and we're done. That would have been a huge miss because there's also, there's the people who are buying furniture just for their home. There are interior designers who are buying, massive custom built tables like to be in the Apple store for their boardroom. There's all these different lenses of storytelling that you can use for funnels to bring people into the site and connect to them for designers, for people who are a bit more affluent and can afford this craft furniture, for X, for Y. It's fantastic to tell that story and really help drive connection and drive sales at the end of the day.
Yeah, of course. You mentioned sometimes they're coming desperately to you because other stuff doesn't work and they come to you for a solution. Do you have a story there or when everything else failed and they was desperate for a solution?
The most recent example is what I just walked through, and you can feel it in the sales and pre-sales process for that engagement was probably 6 months because they were
Okay.
so
Yeah.
so burned by their previous engagement. They knew they needed help, but they were just rightfully cautious because it's a reinvestment with a new agency. It's a reinvestment with a new partner. It's a new relationship with me and my team. So it was a long tail sales process. And again, I mean, this comes back to being a small design agency and consultancy owner. Mm, Closings just take months and months and months, and it just becomes harder to manage. Like you mentioned predictable income before. That's right. That little voice in my head is like, wouldn't you miss a nice casual, consistent paycheck? And I do. But yeah, so it just took again leveraging that human focused lens of being compassionate with this gentleman, understanding that he felt burned, having numerous conversations over a coffee or a beer about how we might be able to work with them and understanding their pain points. Of course I want to work with someone and of course I want to put food on the table. But again, I do this because I value human connection. I was able to truly leverage my lens as a consultant and help them understand, the pros and cons and what the expense would be. I was very happy to work within their budget and phase things out so they're not taking a hit and we can do more cool stuff later once we right the ship on sales. So yeah, that's a very timely and very recent example of going through exactly what you asked about. Someone feeling burned,
Yeah.
someone feeling cautious, and helping them see the light.
Yeah, it's a common topic, and I feel like now more than ever because of AI, you have these freelancers calling themselves agencies, and all they do is they just utilize AI a lot. And what the clients that come to you that have been burned before, most likely have been burned by one of these companies. How do you build that trust up with a client who's been burned before? I feel like this is a whole series that somebody's got to cover because it's just such a common thing now for you to get a client that unfortunately has been burned before. Do you have any more sort of golden nuggets of wisdom there that have worked for you previously to build that trust apart from being authentic? And obviously, you know that you can deliver results for them, so that speaks for itself, but it's them knowing and having that trust that you can.
Yeah, I think what's been most beneficial there is just absolute, complete honesty and transparency
Mm.
about who we are, how we work, having relevant case studies, providing references, which we did copious amounts of in this most recent engagement. Because I think it's gonna bite you in the rear if at the end of the day, if you are not fully honest and transparent about who you are, what you're bringing to the table, what your capabilities are. And I don't think I could sleep at night if I was just blowing through engagements just to make money. We all like money. I love money, but I can't do it at the expense of compromising my values. So like when I'm talking someone, I could have talked to this fellow for 5 of those 6 months, and at the end of the day, he's like, "You know what? I appreciate it. I can't take the risk right now. I'm out. We'll come back to it." And that happens. Sometimes that happens. We were able to work with this fellow and are putting something pretty cool out there. But I think just being to your question, being as authentic to our set of values, which are all plastered all over our agency website, um, putting our money where our mouth is on output and truly showing folks who the team is, who they're. I try as much as humanly possible to be the point of contact. Uh,
Mhm.
Being in-house before when I was a VP at CVS Health, sometimes I did leverage different creative vendors or teams based on our capabilities or what we might needed help in. And I know what it feels like to be passed around to 15 different people and someone kind of knows something about a project and they kind of don't. It doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good at the end of the day. So I try to be the face of whatever engagement as much as humanly possible. So if people feel like their money is well spent and they're being cared for and curated for.
And like you explained, I think you said you had 25 years of knowledge within the industry and obviously doing it for other companies, but that's still valuable experience they've gained over the years that not just anyone can get overnight.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice to. I appreciate you saying that. It's nice to know that the gray hairs do have some value to them at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think they do. I think they do. So, talking about podcasting, because podcasting in a way is storytelling. So, you've been on dozens of podcasts getting yourself out there, but you also had a podcast yourself that you killed off. And I'm wondering, what's the reason for that? Do you think podcasting is overrated for agencies? Did you get to the point that you were like, this takes too much work, too much consistency?
Fantastic question. So I've actually had two podcasts. One was related to my first book. It was called the Creative Culture Podcast, and the second one was with a colleague of mine who works with Anomaly by Design at times. His name is Jan Orvitz, and that was called the Design Leadership Podcast. And that one was, we had the link on our Anomaly website and we were putting episodes together. I think podcasts are infinitely valuable. And I think you and your team do a phenomenal job I think it's a great tool for getting notoriety. I think it's a great tool for staying abreast of the industry and getting good topics out there. I think it was, and I've thought a lot about this, being introspective. I think it was our model specifically. You and I have talked about this in advance of this podcast. And I told you like the editing process, securing guests, working with schedules, like for us, Jan and I, we couldn't figure out how to stay consistent with it. And I think it was the model for us was a little bit of a drag about, working with folks on their schedule and then Jan and I finding time to come to the table and then doing the editing. It just kind of wore us down and maybe we weren't using the right tools or something. Him and I have been talking about coming back to the table and putting something together because I do feel like there's infinite value in these dialogues. So yeah, I would love to come back to it. I think I need to take a more critical look and do a postmortem, if you will, on what went wrong and why we weren't able to maintain consistency. I think it's going to evolve and come back. Yeah, I would largely defer to you on the success. And you've had longevity, you've had consistent guests. You turn out a great product. I need to learn from you how you do it.
I think we can both learn from each other. There's obviously strengths and weaknesses that everyone's got. So it's balancing that out. I'm wondering if you had someone handling all the back end for you and Jan, would you relaunch the podcast? Because you can still
100%.
clearly see the value in it.
Yeah, 100%. And if we weren't able to do that, him and I have even talked about like if it's just him and I talking, like would people care? Two, it would be a lot easier for us because we wouldn't have to secure guests. Yeah, to your point, I've had, I'm sure you get these messages in your inbox all the time as well. We're a full service podcasting firm. We can do all this stuff, or we're a full cast editing firm. And I kind of look at them for a little bit and then I delete them. But I know there are better tools now. There are better editing suites out there now. So I think if I deferred some of what I perceive as grunt work, I might be able to make it a bit more consistent.
Yeah, of course. I love the fact that you've been so honest about it because there is downside to podcasting as well. And I feel like every once in a while you have to take a bit of a break. Like now I'm coming to the end of our series because I've literally popped out 60 episodes, just boom, boom, boom. And if
Yep.
you're losing that honeymoon phase, as I've
Mm,
talked with other people,
yep.
it's good to take a little bit of a break and then come back stronger and have better conversations.
Agree. So to that end, is your podcast evolving in that capacity or
Oh, it will do, yeah, but I'm sort of thinking to take maybe like a month or something off and close the
got it?
series off and then look at the next sort of topics that I want to talk about. But if you
Got it.
but if you think about it, Justin, you need to think about what your audience wants to listen to as well. And I realized my audience is marketing agents because I work with marketing agencies. So what would you listen to? What would you gain value from? So it's sort of just getting that information.
It's a great point. Jan and I have talked about, so Anomaly's whole angle is about, obviously design is connection made manifest, but also folks who are doing it in a creative capacity because it is fulfilling to them or because it is true to them. So we've talked about maybe we take that same perspective and align it to like a chef or a musician or a designer or just somebody who like is not automatically all in on a given tool or a given piece of tech or has taken a leap of faith in their career and bet on themselves and see how that works out. We've talked about that as an idea.
Mm.
But again, we'd be securing guests again and it'd be editing again. So I'd have to really think through the tool editing suite in advance.
Yeah, no, of course. Absolutely, Justin. Let's do something fun. I've got this new thing I'm doing, which is sort of rapid fire questions. I've got maybe like 4 questions for you, but you try to
Okay.
answer in 1 sentence or less.
1 sentence or less. Got it.
Yeah. Are you ready?
Let's do it.
Awesome. So if you could only work with one industry for the rest of your career, what would it be and why?
I would say heritage menswear and denim because I find the craft and the design thinking and the attention to detail to be so inspiring and true to what I'm all about. I think if I had 50 denim clients, I would retire.
You wouldn't be bored by just doing one industry.
I would not.
You wouldn't. Okay. You've written 3 books. Would you do it again, or is that chapter closed off?
I think I have one more book left in me, and I can't
Okay.
articulate exactly what it would be about, but I think I have one more left.
You said you can't articulate it, but you got me curious now. What are you leaning towards the book being?
So my first book was about creative culture, which was macro.
Mhm.
My second book was about fulfillment for designers and best aligning to your work for its outcome, more micro. I'm not sure if the next one would be like as micro as like how to sharpen your pencil or something, but I think I've taken like a lens and I've gradually zoomed in more. So I don't know if I'm getting more micro at this point, and maybe I'm talking to more junior designers or creative
Mhm.
folks or what. But I've thought everything from that to like a children's book because I have 2 kids. I think there's something
Yeah.
else there, but I can't articulate what yet.
You're still figuring it out, basically.
Still figuring it out.
And what would you say is the most common mistake companies make that kills their product before it even launches? This is a deep one.
Not understanding the market and putting something out there for the sake of putting something out there, really. And I think it's mitigated a bit if we're talking in a feature over feature capacity. But yeah, that hasn't done their homework on product market fit, which is something that is one of our service offerings. I think that's where there's the greatest amount of misstep and the greatest amount of failure in a product release. Just trying to speed to market for the sake of speed to market or perceive value when the value isn't there or the value is over anticipated. Without, again, this is where I talk about speed, without first slowing down to understand what are we trying to get to. And AI certainly helps us speed forward now. So I'll raise another danger sign there. I think that's where I see the biggest risk.
How often is that a problem for the product versus the story? Because most often what I hear is a product being created for the sake of a product being created. Like you said, there's no product market fit.
I think it's a little column A, column B, which is hopefully not too much of a cop-out answer. But if there's no market for it, obviously there's going to be a bit of a rude awakening there to whomever is releasing a given product. But also in terms of not understanding a cultural connection, the market this product is being released into, are we marketing it incorrectly? Do we not truly understand what people need? Maybe it is the greatest thing in the world, but if we're not understanding the cultural connection and the levels of engagement with what we're releasing, again, it's going to fall flat. So it's a really non-trivial feat, and bravo to everyone who's had a successful product release. To release something that is widely adopted becomes something that is a bit of a lexicon in what we are using.
Loved your answer there. Culture. That's such a huge connection they need to have with their product. I wish we could have a whole episode about this because I feel like there's so much more depth to go into this topic.
Yes.
Justin, my last question to you is, what is your plan for the agency for the next 12 months? Any goals you guys are trying to achieve this year?
Well, internally, again, to your the earlier discussion about being energized, one of our models is, again, one of the benefits of having worked in the industry so long, our network is vast and we know many folks who are not only thought leaders in what they do, but really just genuinely inspire us and energize us, to use that again, to collaborate with. So I've been able to collaborate with like Steve Portugal, like the research guy, or like I mentioned Jan Orvit in from Sweden, brilliant design strategist. Derek Stembridge, my marketing partner, brilliant marketer, really working with folks. Again, this is just the internal scratching of the itch that will charge us. I always consider myself a student of my craft, will help me learn things I don't know, help me get better about articulating our services and being a better consultant. So that is one. We're working with more folks internationally that are going to help us be better at what we do. And two, just as a business, as much as humanly possible, try to steady the pipeline. Steady the pipeline, steady the sales, really get out in front of obviously not overextending ourselves for sure. But as much as humanly possible, and the market is volatile and we have a war going on right now, and there's just stuff that happened week over week that you cannot predict that it keeps rocking us as human beings. And maybe this is a fool's errand, but trying to make that as consistent as humanly possible and not have a sale like, oh, look at this, a sale came in. Just study that as much as humanly possible, which is I think is the great thing to solve.
Yeah, it seems like you are looking for that growth, but you don't want accelerative growth. You want steady, sustainable growth that's
Exactly.
manageable.
Exactly.
Yeah, awesome. Following up to that is if you had a magic wand to fix one bottleneck that could get you to your goal quicker, what would it be?
In terms of the bottleneck, I think what wears me and my partners down the most is the multiple wearing of hats. Like we don't have a
Mm,
dedicated sales team, if you will. And I think trying to be as humble as possible. I think I do a pretty successful job about pre-sales and sales once we get in the room and articulating our value and how we create and the outcomes we can generate. Like the equivalent, however it manifests digitally, tangibly, of cold calling, reaching out to folks, just like a dedicated sales team. That is the bottleneck. And like again, like you, I'm sure you get emails all the time. I do as well about we're your AI call center sales team. We promise you 50 leads. I've kind of looked at that kind of stuff as well. But if I could really solve the bottleneck or the what I will say again is perceived tedium of, I'll air quote this, knocking on doors for sales, that would just take a lot off my shoulders.
yeah. Okay, Justin, if people were interested in finding out more about your books or where to get them or what you're doing next, where should they look?
I think our website is a great place to start. Anomaly with an I by design.com, one word, or I'm on LinkedIn. You could find me on there quite easily, Justin Dauer. Yeah, and those places I tend to keep pretty current. The website does a good job of our website on my personal page has the articles I've written and the podcasts I've been on and the books I've written. So if you'd like to stay in touch, that would be a great place to do so. And I appreciate
Yeah.
you asking.
Awesome, Justin. Thank you so much for taking the time and spending an hour together with me, letting me pick your brain.
Absolutely, Yolanta. Thanks for having me on.
Great. For anyone listening, all the links Justin mentioned will be dropped down below in the description so you can easily locate him. Thank you very much for watching.